This is a recap of the movie named Survive, a disaster survival story where a family's vacation trip turns into a fight against nature, strangers, and the world itself. I'm FlickWreck, and let's get into it. We begin on the Caribbean Sea, where Julia and her family are enjoying a yacht vacation. Julia dives into the water to relax, but she gets that classic horror movie feeling. Something's brushing against her leg. She tries to shake it off as her imagination until something actually pulls at her leg. She screams, but her daughter Cassie can't hear because she's blasting music, while Tom, her husband, and son Ben are too focused on fishing. Julia fights to stay afloat, choking on salt water between screams, until Tom finally realizes she's missing. He rushes across the yacht, spots her struggling in the waves, and immediately springs into action. After shouting for the kids to help, he steers the yacht closer, jumps into the water, and drags Julia back to safety. With Cassie and Ben helping from the deck, he hauls her up. Julia's shaken and blames it on a current, but everyone knows something is off. That night, they try to lift the mood. It's Ben's birthday, complete with cake and gifts. Meanwhile, Cassie sneaks off for a video call with her boyfriend, but the signal is glitching. He shows her huge storm clouds over the city before the cuts. Cassie rushes back worried, but Tom brushes it off as bad signal. Just then, the yacht shakes violently. When they rush outside, they see a pod of whales swimming by. Tom explains that whales normally follow Earth's magnetic field, but if a storm messes with it, they can get confused and follow the wrong path, like this one. Before anyone can relax, the yacht shudders again. Tom dives in to check for damage, but comes back with a cut shoulder, blaming the propeller, though he admits something big was swimming nearby. Worse, the yacht's engine is severely damaged. Julia keeps trying the radio, Cassie keeps searching for a signal, and Ben tries his best to lighten the mood with jump scares and a mask. But soon the yacht stops working entirely, and they're stranded in middle of ocean. Julia eventually picks up a faint voice on the radio, but it's all static. Tom tries to keep spirits up, saying they've got food and water for 4 days and just need to wait for another boat. Then the radar picks up something, followed by a strange noise outside. The family runs out and watches in shock as fiery objects streak through the sky. At first, they think it's meteorites, but Tom realizes these are actually satellites falling back to Earth. One smashes into the water nearby, another fries their yacht engine completely. The compass starts going wild, winds pick up, and Ben keeps getting knocked around as the waves slam the yacht. Tom rushes life jackets to his family, and when the power cuts, he uses a flare for light. The storm rages through the night, tearing the yacht apart. By morning, they stumble out in shock. They survived, but the ocean hasn't, because it's gone. The yacht is now sitting on dry land in the middle of a desert. They stare at the wasteland in disbelief. Cassie tries her phone, no signal. Ben plays with dead crabs. Tom checks the compass and realizes the poles have reversed. The last time that happened was 700,000 years ago. Cassie breaks down, assuming her boyfriend's dead, and locks herself away. Meanwhile, Ben ties his birthday balloons to a rock as a makeshift rescue signal. Finally, Tom makes radio contact with Now, a submarine captain also stranded on land. He explains the oceans disappeared because the magnetic poles flipped, pulling seas inland. The poles will flip again soon, and when the waters return, it's going to be violent. He advises them to climb as high as possible. His submarine has room for only 3, so Tom and Julia convince him to save the kids, and he gives them coordinates. Tom calculates it'll take 2 or 3 days to reach him, so they decide to rest and leave at sunrise. But the next morning, trouble finds them first. While packing, Tom spots a limping man with a harpoon and a barking dog. Tom tries to be kind, offering him water, but kindness doesn't pay here. The stranger smashes Tom in the face with the bottle, then stabs him in the stomach. Julia runs over but watches helplessly as the man slashes Tom's throat. Tom twitches and collapses. The stranger immediately goes after Julia, even throwing the harpoon, grazing her shoulder. She bolts back to the yacht, orders the kids to hide inside the sofa, and arms them with the flare gun. Julia hides in the bathroom with a knife, but the man breaks inside and begins raiding the yacht for supplies. Julia narrowly escapes through a hole in the wall, trying to sneak away, until the dog starts barking. It tackles her, and Julia has no choice but to stab it to death. The stranger finds his dead dog and breaks down in rage. Julia sneaks around the yacht, climbing up to slip inside through a broken window. But the limping man is already waiting. He punches her, sending her crashing down. She claws at the furniture as he drags her away, managing to kick him back, but he stomps on her wrist until she drops the knife. Grabbing her by the hair, he smashes her face into the floor, then throws her onto the sofa and begins choking her. The kids, who've been hiding and watching this nightmare unfold, can't take it anymore. Cassie grabs the flare gun and fires. The flare slams into the man, lighting him up and setting the yacht on fire. The kids bolt outside, but Julia refuses to leave without the essentials. She kicks the man in the face, snatches the map with the submarine coordinates, and grabs their bags. Then she joins her kids as they cling to Tom's body for one last goodbye. Tears fall, but grief doesn't last. The limping man stumbles back out of the flames. The family runs for their lives as the yacht explodes in a fiery blast behind them. Hours later, they rest at a waterfall. Cassie wonders if Ben's balloons gave away their location, making him feel guilty. Julia reassures him it wasn't his fault and urges them to keep moving because she knows the man is still following. At a pond, Ben is fascinated by the body of a hammerhead shark until Julia spots their pursuer closing in again. They run, sliding down a dune, only to find themselves surrounded by barrels of toxic waste. Carefully, they skirt around it, finally losing the man for now. As they keep traveling, they pass stranded whales, rotting sea life, and mounds of plastic waste dragged up from the ocean floor. Ben starts slowing down, clearly dehydrated, so they stop. Julia checks their bottle and nearly breaks down. It's almost empty. Cassie admits she must not have closed it properly. Julia yells at her for being careless. Cassie screams back that it doesn't matter, because they'll all die anyway. After a heated argument, they keep walking in silence. Eventually, they find a crashed plane. Something stirs inside, but it's only birds. Relieved, they decide to spend the night there. They share a meager snack, and Julia finds a photo of Tom in his jacket, breaking her heart all over again. Cassie asks how her parents met, so Julia tells her. Tom once came to her hospital as a patient, wooed her with flowers and poetry, and refused to take no for an answer until she fell in love. That night, Cassie slips outside to relieve herself. The limping man suddenly ambushes her, but Julia leaps out of the shadows, stabbing him again and again in a frenzy of rage and grief. Cassie hugs her tightly until she finally stops. By morning, his corpse is crawling with fleas. Julia notices the bite marks and realizes some animal must be nearby. After they leave, the truth slithers out. Crabs crawl from his mouth. The family trudges on. When Julia and Cassie stop to check the map, Ben ignores them and plunges his face into a pond, desperate for water. Julia yanks him back, warning him that unknown water could kill him. They march on, covering their heads under the blistering sun. Ben grows dizzy, so when they spot old chairs, Julia and Cassie stack them into a makeshift shelter. Julia gives Ben an injection to stabilize him, and they decide to spend the night. At dawn, Julia wakes to a horrible sound. A swarm of crabs is approaching. She wakes the kids, and they sprint across the barren land until they spot a massive cargo ship. On board, 3 crew members are alive. A woman wants to help, but the 2 men panic and lock themselves inside a container, refusing entry to the family. Julia has no choice. She makes her kids climb on top. As she climbs too, crabs latch onto her leg, pinching and dragging. The kids pull her up just in time. Through a hole in the container wall, crabs pour inside. The crew fights back with guns, but the swarm overwhelms them. 2 men are killed instantly, and the last tries escaping through a ceiling hatch, only to be dragged down and torn apart. Julia bandages her leg, but the blood loss makes her pass out. She wakes in a sandstorm, alone. Panicked, she grabs the dead woman's gun and staggers outside, calling for her kids. Her screams are answered. Cassie comes running back, explaining that she and Ben had gone to search for help, but found nothing. They reunite with Ben, who has discovered an open container they can use for shelter until the storm passes. Julia uses Tom's lighter to cauterize her leg wound, shrieking in agony but refusing to quit. After the storm, they find bottled water in another container, plus a radio and more weapons. Julia calls now and admits she lost the map. He explains he's been attacked by abyssal arthropods, creatures from the deep driven insane by oxygen. Worse, the seas are returning sooner than expected, so they have only hours left. He fires a flare for them to follow. The family sets off. Along the way, Ben finds a broken toilet and proudly relieves himself in it. Finally, they see the submarine, but it's blocked by a towering rock formation. They climb, but the rocks start shaking and collapse in a massive landslide. Julia pushes the kids out of harm's way, but is separated from them by a new wall of rock. She urges them to continue without her. Cassie refuses at first, but after a painful argument, Julia swears she'll find them again. Reluctantly, Cassie drags Ben onward. At the submarine, they find Tai, now bleeding out. He tells them to take the vessel and save themselves. Cassie realizes there's room for one more, and rushes back for her mother. Meanwhile, Julia is swarmed by crabs. She opens fire, killing a few, but the swarm is too big. Just as she's about to collapse, Cassie appears above, extending her hand. Julia climbs with all her strength, despite her wound, and with Cassie's help, makes it over the wall. They reunite at the submarine, where Ben is shooting from the roof to keep the crabs at bay. The swarm finds Now's corpse and tears it apart. Julia grabs the gun, firing until she runs out of bullets. She throws the weapon at the crabs in defiance and dives inside, locking the hatch with her kids. Through the windows, they watch the swarm close in. But then the ocean comes roaring back. The submarine is thrown around violently. Julia flashes back to everything they've endured. Cassie throws up, and all three pass out from the noise and pressure. Hours later, they awaken alive. The submarine has been carried inland and now rests in a ruined city. The world is broken, but not finished. Julia, Cassie, and Ben climb out together, hope still flickering for survival and rebuilding. That was The Survive, a family vacation gone from champagne and sunsets to crabs and apocalypse. If you enjoyed this recap, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss another FlickWreck breakdown. Thanks for watching.